Hello everyone, Mr. Pope here, and today we're going to be discussing the death and importance of the ninth President of the United States, William Henry Harrison. We'll start with a little bit of a biography on William Henry Harrison. Harrison was born on February 9th, 1773, to Benjamin Harrison, who was a signer of the Declaration of Independence and a governor of Virginia. Now, Harrison in his early years would be educated pretty well. He'd go to college. He would for a while study to become a doctor, before eventually he would go on to join the Army. Now, it is in the Army where Harrison first starts to make a name for himself. He serves as an aide-de-camp to General Anthony Wayne, or Mad Anthony Wayne, at the Battle of Fallen Timbers in 1791. And he continued to serve in the Army after that until in 1798 he resigns from the Army and is made the Secretary of the Northwest Territory. After that, he goes on to serve as the delegate for the Northwest Territory to Congress, and in 1800, Congress passes legislation that splits up the Northwest Territory, and one of these territories that would be formed was the Indiana Territory, which Harrison would go on to serve as governor for from 1801 to 1813. Now, while Harrison was serving as governor, he signed several treaties with Native Americans that forced them to give up millions of acres of land in his territory. Now, in response to this, many Native Americans got together and they formed a confederation to try and fight off the encroachment of settlers into their territory. Now, Harrison had to, as governor of Indiana, respond to this. So he ends up fighting at the Battle of Tippecanoe. So in 1811, at the Battle of Tippecanoe, Harrison fights this confederation. Now, he's fighting against Tecumseh, and the battle itself is inconclusive. He doesn't really win anything. There are heavy losses by U.S. troops, but it establishes Harrison's reputation as an Indian fighter, and this is important because during the election of 1840, he's going to really use this while he's running for president. He calls himself Old Tippecanoe. So then, in 1813, though, he fights the Battle of the Thames. Now, the Battle of the Thames is much more consequential. The Indian leader Tecumseh is killed, and this essentially stops the Confederation and opens up the territories for settlers, for white settlers to come in and take this land. And this is very important because, again, Harrison will capitalize on this Indian fighter reputation during the election of 1840. Now, after the War of 1812, Harrison ends up getting elected as a member of the House from Ohio, serving in that for about 3 years, and then later in the 1820s, he gets elected as a senator from Ohio, and he serves in that for about 3 years too. In 1828, however, he ends up resigning his post as a senator and becomes the U.S. Minister to Grand Columbia and serving in that for about a year. It's then, though, in 1836 that we see Harrison make his first run for president with the newly established Whig Party. Now, the Whigs did not have any real unified platform, so what they ended up doing was running 4 different candidates all across the country, with that candidate sort of representing that area. Now, this tactic was terrible because it splits the vote, and it prevents any Whig candidate from actually winning enough to beat Martin Van Buren, who was at the time the vice president and the chosen successor of Andrew Jackson. So Harrison ends up coming in second with around 70 votes, and Van Buren wins the election. Now, in 1837, Van Buren ends up taking office, and not long after he takes office, hits the Panic of 1837, which is just a terrible economic recession that hits the country. And Van Buren doesn't really hit the issue well. He seems kind of out of touch to a lot of people. He's not really doing much. And they called him Martin Van Ruin because of this. So in 1840, Harrison comes back and he decides he's going to run again and he's going to beat Van Buren. So in this election, what Harrison ends up doing is he's going to try and portray himself as the sort of man of the people, that he's the one who's really going to help. Now, it's kind of ironic because Harrison came from that sort of Virginia aristocracy, and Van Buren actually came from much more humble origins in New York. But that doesn't really matter because what happens is the portrayal of Harrison is as this down-to-earth person. And this is later helped during the campaign by one newspaper. So during the election, one pro-Van Buren Democratic newspaper puts this quote in their paper. They say, "Give him a barrel of hard cider and a pension of $2,000 a year, and he will sit the remainder of his days in his log cabin." And Harrison is smart. He capitalizes on this, and he does the log cabin campaign. He makes it the centerpiece of his campaign. So he's doing really well. And his running mate is John Tyler, and they end up having the slogan of Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Very catchy campaign slogan. And they end up winning this election because of Van Buren's image as this out-of-touch elitist who's not doing anything for the country, with 234 votes to 60, which is just an amazing landslide election. So Harrison gets elected president, and on March 4th, he's sworn in at 68 years old, the oldest president up to this point. He gives the longest speech in history of an inauguration for the American president, and then he gets sick and dies. Yeah, pretty anticlimactic, isn't it? The old theory was that Harrison, because he didn't wear a coat or a hat, ends up catching pneumonia and dying. Now, that's not really what happened, because he didn't start complaining about feeling ill until 3 weeks later, and any sort of breathing problems are not reported until 5 days in. Most likely what happened was that bad water in Washington, D.C., which was a major problem that would just sapped the health of many presidents, most likely killed him. But on April 4th, 1841, Harrison dies. His last words were to his doctor, though they are presumed to have been they are presumed to have been towards John Tyler, his vice president. He says, "Sir, I wish you to understand the true principles of the government. I wish them carried out. I ask nothing more." Now is the question of why is Harrison important? He didn't do anything. The only thing of any importance during his administration was that he called a special session of Congress to try and address the financial issues that were going on in the country. But that didn't even happen before he died. The special session of Congress was scheduled for May of 1841. What is important about Harrison's presidency? Well, the most important thing is that he died. And that might sound very weird. Up to this point, we had had no succession crises, no presidents who had resigned or died up to this point. So a vice president being forced to take over is incredibly important. And John Tyler comes in and takes over, and there's this immediate discussion of, well, is he the acting president? Is he the president until there's a new election? But Tyler comes in, and very quickly, he establishes the precedent that when the president dies, the vice president takes over, and the continuity of government continues. And that's incredibly important. And this becomes the precedent, again, during the next presidential death, in 1850, when President Zachary Taylor dies, and Millard Fillmore comes in and does not have to fight to be recognized as the actual president. So Harrison's death is incredibly consequential because of that. Hello everyone, Mr. Pope here again. Thanks for tuning in today's video, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out some of my other videos. You guys have a wonderful day.